Next, we're going to look at the pen tool. And the pen tool gives us the ability to draw different types of shapes other than the ones that we were looking at. And it's very similar to the polygonal lasso tool in that whenever you click, it draws a straight line, and then another one, and so on. But unlike the polygonal lasso tool, the pen tool gives us the ability to edit our shape at any given time. And you'll notice that once I get back to the starting point, see how the little circle appears below the pen. So whenever I click on that, it closes the shape. Now, at the top here, you'll notice that we have some options. We can choose what we want to do with this shape. We can choose to make it a selection, a mask, or we can turn it into its own shape layer. And you'll notice that whenever I click that, it puts it on its own layer, and it filled it with our foreground color, just like the other shapes would be naturally. So then we can go in and edit our shape at any given time. And of course, how we would do that is to once again choose the direct selection tool, and then I can select one point and drag it down, and it'll edit our shape. Okay, let's say that you add a point in here and you decide, you know what, I probably shouldn't have added that point. Well, if you left mouse click and hold the pen tool down, you'll notice that we have add anchor point, delete anchor point. If we choose delete anchor point, when we click on a point, you'll notice how the little minus appears in the pen. When I click on it, it removes it. The same is true if we choose the add anchor point anywhere along the path. Whenever the little pen and plus sign appear, if I click, it creates a point. Okay, and then we can go in and use the direct selection tool to edit that point. Now you'll notice that by default it added a point that's a natural curve. It's a natural, evenly balanced Bezier curve. That gives us some advantages from an editing perspective, but let's say that you don't want it to be that way, that you want it to be a sharp cornered edge. Well, you also notice one of our choices here under the pen tool is convert point tool, and I'll show you how it works. If I select that and just click on this point that we created, watch what happens. Okay, it removes the adjustment points on it and turns it into a sharp edge as a part of the path. However, let's say that we didn't want it to turn into that kind of a shape, and we clicked it by mistake, or we're trying to get another effect, and we want to add a Bezier curve to our path. Like let's say over here, it's already a strong, edged corner, you'll notice. If I left mouse click, and instead of just clicking and releasing, if I left mouse click and drag, you notice that it adds Bezier curve points. Now, check this out. Let me make this a little bit more pronounced. I'm going to move this point up higher. And so you'll notice that right now, both sides of the edit point here move simultaneously. Okay. Now, if I choose the convert point tool and click on just one of these points, like this one over here, okay, watch what happens now. Now I can edit and move this one independent from the one that's there. Not by clicking on the center point, but by clicking on this extension here. Okay, so it's really a cool feature that the path tools offer to you, because it gives us the ability to really edit these paths to whatever shape we need them to be. Now, the other tool that we have here, of course, is the freeform pen tool, and it works very similar to the lasso tool in that you can draw freeform, just whatever shape you want. Notice the circle appearing, so that'll close it. And then it smooths out our drawing and adds in anchor points wherever it feels that they belong best. Okay, and then we can go in, of course, and edit those as we see fit. Now, let's take our pen tool experience, if you will, and apply it to a real world environment working with a photograph. So I have the tomatoes up here, and I want to show you a really neat feature of using these pen tools. Okay, one of the things that I love about the pen tool is that it gives us the ability to actually go in and isolate elements of a photograph and get very, very precise. You might remember before where we silhouetted out part of one of the tomatoes. The pen tool makes it infinitely easier because you can edit those points at any given time. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to turn on another feature that I had pointed out briefly before, and that is the magnetic option. And basically what the magnetic option does, you'll notice that there's a little magnet next to the pen tool now. So it essentially gives the pen tool the ability to detect edges. So whenever I click and start painting, really drawing, you notice that the pen tool is following along the edge of the tomato. Yes, I'm closing in the ballpark, but it is recognizing that edge, and it's adding points in a very linear fashion. You notice that they're fairly evenly spaced out, not completely. I can also click to add points myself, or I can hold the mouse button down as I'm drawing, and it'll add a lot more points, which you really don't need to do that. Just allow the program to figure it out for itself, or add them yourself. So I'm just following around the shape of the tomato, and you notice that even though I'm varying a little bit left or right, it's still hugging the edge of that tomato like there's no tomorrow. And then whenever I click, it removes all the extra points and reduces it down to just a few that it thinks that I need, which are still too many. So the next thing I can do then is go ahead and delete a bunch of these extra anchor points. You know, I'm going to delete a lot of them just to kind of prove the flexibility that you have with these adjustment bars. Alright, so now that we've removed a lot of them, you notice that we're not quite as form-fitting to our tomato. So I'm going to go back here and choose the direct selection tool, and then I can pick a specific point and start to fine-tune how the path is interacting with the shape that I want to achieve. And let's zoom in here just a little bit more so you can see. So I can get very, very precise. I'll just increase that a little bit. And so now it just becomes a matter of fine-tuning how these curves are fitting to the tomato. And by the way, you can always add more points if you need to. If you're trying to get something to wrap around and it won't quite happen, you can always add more points. So maybe reposition this puppy here a little bit. And once in a while you get these points that are unruly. Notice how it's stacked on top of each other. So what I'll often do in that case is choose convert point and just click on it and then create a new one. That way I can go back to editing the way I want to. There's no Bezier curve point that's going to tell me what to do. And so we just apply the last little bit of editing here. And you notice that I can be extremely form-fitting around this tomato, which is awesome. It just really gives you a level of control that's hard to achieve using lasso tool, because you just can't be that precise. You can't go in and re-edit after the fact. So once I'm happy with my end result, I have a couple options. You notice that I can right mouse click and I can make a selection from this path that we just created, which is what I want to do. So I'm going to make a selection, and I can choose to feather it, which very often if I'm isolating an object out of a photo, I'll feather it by 1 pixel, but you don't have to. I'll click OK, and it turns it into a selection. And now I can copy and paste, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. And you'll notice if I turn off the background layer, we have a perfectly silhouetted tomato. Okay, let me zoom out just so you can see. And so that's really the power of paths when working with photographs.